So Matt Pratt-Hyatt, PhD, received his PhD in cellular and molecular, making sure we're live, cellular and molecular biology from the University of Michigan. He is trained under Dr. Paul Holenberg, a prominent researcher on drug metabolism, and Dr. Curtis Klassen, one of the world's leading toxicologists. He has over a dozen publications in well-known research journals such as the PNAS and Cell Metabolism. He is currently Associate Laboratory Director at the Great Plains Lab. No. He's currently with Real-Time Labs as Vice President and what else did you say?
Vice President of Product and Business Development.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Whoever said that was a little out of date.
Yeah.
But this is probably true. Focuses on treatment of mitochondrial disorders, neurological diseases, chronic immune diseases, and more.
Yeah.
He specializes in developing tools that examine factors at the interface between genetics and toxicology. His work is bringing new insight into how genes and toxicants interact and how that may lead to mental health disorders, chronic health issues, and metabolism disorders. Awesome, that's so great. So I'm curious, did you just end up getting hired by a lab that was already into all this stuff, or how did you get kind of pulled into this world of toxins, especially mold toxins?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was working for the University of Kansas as a postdoctoral fellow, doing toxicology research to see how different toxins affected the human body. I kind of wanted to move out of academic research and move more towards applied research. So I had applied to the Great Plains Laboratory because I knew that they were interested in toxins. And so I applied on a Monday and they had hired me by Thursday. And so, it was pretty much just like I pretty much just cold called them saying like, are you looking for anybody? And they said, oh, yes, please. So they had been working for like 5 years to try to get their toxic chemical test on board. So
that was the GPL tox, the chemicals panel.
The
okay.
Pesticides, herbicides. So yeah, so we got that going in less than a year from when I joined up. So that was one of the first 5 different tests that I had developed for them.
So we can talk more about that test later. It's kind of perfect. So we do offer that test because for body testing, we go through Great Plains because of, frankly, how you can add on the oat and the toxins testing. So that just seemed like, such a win for our community. So we can chat more about that later. That's awesome. Let's first talk about indoor mold, and we're going to mostly focus on home mold testing, dust testing today. Just to kind of lay the framework, why is indoor mold such a problem that we're hearing about these days?
Unfortunately, it has to do with cutting corners or utilizing building materials that are easier for the manufacturer, but maybe not as good for the residents. So there's a lot of papers, probably 3 or 4 papers on this, showing that building materials such as like drywall and gypsum and instead of like plaster and bricks, these newer materials are much easier to build with, but also much easier for mold to grow on. So mold likes to grow on them a lot more prevalently, so you're going to get a lot more mycotoxins. So that's what we're seeing, and also a lot of like newer homes. Unfortunately, the construction is done really rapidly, so
that's true.
They don't make sure that there's no like water leaks, so you just get like one minor water leak in the home, and that can lead to mold growth. So I know dealing with a lot of remediators, even in places like that you would think would be very arid and dry, like Phoenix, you see like $500 million homes with like major mold infestations, because it does rain there occasionally, and then you get water dripping in behind the walls and you get mold growth.
Yeah, I'm in Phoenix. I don't know if you knew that for the climate because of my mold history. But that actually did happen to a friend of mine, that they had a house built for them that had a leak, and they found it quickly and got it addressed. But first of all, it's kind of a headache when you just paid to have a new home built. And yeah, it's a good point. I mean, where we live, there's often a lot of building, and they throw up neighborhoods real fast.
Yeah.
You know, and I see it in older homes though too. So here in Phoenix,
see it in older homes, yeah.
Yeah. Here in Phoenix, some of the homes are built really with like cement block. I think there's leakage behind it, or I don't know if it's a roofing type, but some of the old homes here have it. And then the old home I was in, but yeah, a lot of the chronic leaking, and then it just, you know, it eats that drywall. Have you done any, this is a bit of an aside, but have you done any research into like how EMF and mold may be interacting?
That's a great question, and no, it's not something that I've really had any like. I mean, I've read some papers on it, but there's very limited like peer-reviewed journaled articles on the interaction between EMF and mold. So hard to say.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, but up for suspicion.
Yeah.
So again, as kind of a primer, I want to kind of explain to people, not all mold is toxic to humans. So which species are the common ones that are toxic to humans?
I mean, you got your big four that I really like to point out. You got your Aspergillus, your Fusarium, your Stachybotrys, and your like Ketotonium. Those are kind of like your Penicillium too, maybe big five. So 5 different like families. Now underneath those families, there's multiple different species under them. Like there's multiple different Aspergillus species, multiple different Penicillium species, multiple different a couple different Stachybotrys species. So, but the good thing is that most of these different species, you can if you look at the mycotoxins, because all of them make almost the same mycotoxins, it allows you to like catch a whole bunch of different species.
Oh, okay, perfect. So that could be a benefit to running the mycotoxin is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why for Emma, we recommend doing both tests, because there's multiple different reasons why to run both a mold test and a mycotoxin test in the home.
Yeah, do you want to just go ahead and elaborate on it?
Just to elaborate on that, so you really want to like catch both, because there's reasons to try to catch both. So on the mold side, you're like we look at 10 of the most common molds out there by a DNA PCR method. So it's we collect the dust, we extract the DNA out of the dust, and then we have primers for 10 of the most common mold species out there. But there's 300 different mold species, so you can't look at all of them. Even the ERMI, which looks at 35 different species, doesn't match all of them. So that's the reason why you need to do the mycotoxins. The mycotoxin, you can't look at every single Aspergillus, you can't look at every single Penicillium, but if you look at 15 different mycotoxins, then you can catch them a lot easier.
Okay. Go ahead.
There's also the other good reason for doing the mycotoxins is that the mold, you might not always like get the mold, because a lot of times the molds will be living behind the walls, and so if you see here on the left-hand side, these are the mycotoxins that we're looking at, and then on the right-hand side, these are the molds that we are looking at. So looking for the mycotoxins is important because, especially for the Stachybotrys type of molds, which are very sticky, you could have a Stachybotrys growth behind the wall. The mold spores can't get through the wall, but the mycotoxins can. So, and I've heard a practitioner kind of like give an analogy of a skunk. Like you could have a skunk living underneath your house. You can smell the skunk, you can't feel the skunk. So mycotoxins are kind of like the same way, where
That may be the opposite because you feel it, but you might not smell it.
You're breathing in the mycotoxins, but you can't touch the molds.
You can't see them. Yeah.
You can't see the molds. You can't, even if you try to like do like an ERMI or the DNA EMA, you're not going to get any of the like DNA from the molds because all the DNA is stuck behind the wall. So doing the mycotoxins, especially for Stachybotrys, because we have 15, or we got like multiple different trichothecenes. So all these trichothecenes are made by Stachybotrys. So
all these ones here.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
and is Stachybotrys the one called black mold or not necessarily?
That
yes.
is right. If
okay.
you're talking about black mold, Stachybotrys that's that one.
And it's as far as health is concerned, I know it's a pretty nasty one. Not to say the other ones aren't. I mean, I think
no, unfortunately, all of them are very nasty that we're looking at. I mean, and I've consulted with hundreds of practitioners over my last 6 years, working with chronic illnesses, and yeah, I mean, I see a lot of different molds causing problems.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just so depends that your health background, it's, how can I say, some people could have a moderate level of mycotoxins and be really sick. Some people could be really high and not be as sick. But I really like the mycotoxin testing because it's not the only thing about mold that makes you sick. There's VOCs and other things, but to me, especially as a health practitioner, as someone who just values health, you want to know the level of what's making you sick to correlate it with other things and to track it going down, because they are two different beasts, the mycotoxins and the mold. And you can remove mold spores from your house, but if you still have mycotoxins in the house, you're gonna maybe not improve or not as much as you could have if you had checked for mycotoxins. So I'm a big fan of it. I don't know if the EMA sort of came later than the ERMI and okay, so maybe that's why. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, and we'll give some background if people have no idea what we're talking about, but there's another testing system called ERMI, and it's kind of a rating scale. Matt can probably explain it more. And I kind of hear about it a little more, and I do see them because we also review any test people want to bring to us. But I don't like it as well, which is how we ended up, working with you guys. So you probably have some rationale, Matt, and
we definitely do. I mean,
okay, you developed it.
Well, I didn't develop it, but I'm currently working on it right now. Dr. Hooper, the founder of Real Time, developed the EMA. We are working on improving it, adding more markers to it. I'm hoping by next year we have more markers on the EMA, including our urine mycotoxin test as well. But the reason why he designed it is that, just as for the reasons I had talked about earlier, is that you can get instances of a negative ERMI or a negative on the DNA side of the mycotoxin, or on the spore count for the EMA, but you really need the mycotoxin side too to get the complete picture.
Yeah, I'm going to try to pull up. I had actually a thing up about, I was reading an ERMI for a client, and I saved the thing, so maybe I can kind of show it to people. So, and it kind of compares outdoor and indoor.
It does. I mean, that's our score, is the outdoor versus the indoor, and there's a lot of people that really don't like the ERMI score because it can lead to a false sense of security, especially if you have a lot of molds growing on the outside of the house. I think that a lot of people ignore the score for both the ERMI and the HERTSMI.
Yeah, here's a resource I pulled up to look at a client's recently. So this doesn't show an actual ERMI test, unfortunately.
This is the HERTSMI, yeah.
Yeah. And this
is HERTSMI is similar to the ERMI, but it's a lot less number of markers. You're only looking at 5 different
PCR.
species, unlike the 10 that we have on the ERMI, we have 10 different molds. They only have 5 for the HERTSMI, but I mean, some people do use it because of the cost. I mean, generally, HERTSMI is cheaper to run than both the ERMI and the EMA, but you're losing a lot of data behind.
Okay, so that's helpful for me. I thought the HERTSMI more was like a health measure than the EMA. That's not true. It's just less.
We don't have a score for the EMA. It's something that I'm working on.
I'm sorry, not EMA, the ERMI.
The ERMI, yeah, the ERMI score is more of a health thing than the ERMI is. So the scoring system is different.
Okay, sorry. So I think I'm getting everyone confused. So HERTSMI is just as kind of a more limited, cheaper test, or it's also, okay. And then maybe I can pull up an ERMI in a second here just to kind of compare. So there's no mycotoxins tested at all on the ERMI or HERTSMI?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and my understanding too is some spores can be kind of sitting if they like an area hasn't been cleaned or whatever, and it may not represent the level of actual like health risk of the home.
I agree to that too, and there's a lot. I work with a lot of different remediators, and sometimes you'll get a remediator come through, or they'll try to clean up the house themselves, the homeowner. They'll get the mold out, but they'll leave behind the mycotoxins, and then we'll remeasure the home after the remediation and see a lot of mycotoxins still behind.
Okay. Yeah. So this is one I pulled up. This one doesn't look exactly like the ones I've seen, but it gives you this score, and it's like if you're in this red region, that's bad kind of a thing. And then we talked about kind of some of the things it's measuring.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I don't agree with all the things. And the ERMI was developed by the EPA as like a academic exercise, and several labs have commercialized it. It really was never designed to be a commercial test.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So some of the mycotoxins, I think that there's a better list of mycotoxins that could be tested for on the ERMI. I think there's a lot on there that are fairly not useful at all.
Yeah, and not dangerous to your health. So it's like not very helpful if you have a health issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's definitely a lot of limitations on the ERMI, and the costs for the ERMI and the EMA are for most companies, are fairly close together. So we try to price our test to be competitive with our the other labs.
Okay. Well, let's talk about more about your testing methodology. This is now we're back to you guys, bouncing all around. So it's a QPCR test. I've been like a couple of months ago, I was trying to explain more, how that works. Maybe you can explain it better. And then this is efficacy here. Is this still current?
Yeah, all of this is still current. So what you're looking at here is that we have probes designed for a specific stretch of DNA in all of these different species. So the U.S. government has a really nice tool called BLAST, where you can like search for a certain stretch of DNA and then blast that stretch of DNA against thousands of different species, like make sure that what you're looking at is specific to only that one species. So that helped us design these probes for all these different species. So that after you take the DNA out of the dust, you can use your probes to determine the amount of DNA in the dust for each of these different species. And each probe each probe goes into a different well. So one probe for like aspergillus goes into one well, other probe for like Stachybotrys goes into a second well, other one for ketotonium goes into a third well. So that's generally how we like measure the amount of mold in the dust.
Okay, and these we're talking about spores now. And this is the mycotoxin you measure with ELISA testing, which some people might have heard of because of allergies. Can you tell us more about that?
So like the mycotoxins are something that's produced by the molds. So the mold spores will release mycotoxins. And mycotoxins are very small chemicals, which their chemical structure is very similar to what you'll see in like chemical warfare agents, especially the trichothecenes. So a small amount, even like parts per trillion amounts of mycotoxins could cause environment or human like health problems. So that's the reason why we have these ranges here of different, especially like trichothecenes. We go down to like 0.01 parts per billion.
Wow.
Really looking at
wow. Parts per billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
It's kind of like somebody like talked about like looking at like a needle in a haystack. I mean, that's what that's like one drop of water and a billion drops of water. So it's like pretty much like finding like a drop of water in like a medium-sized swimming pool.
Wow. Yeah, and I want to just emphasize again, this is one of the components that really affects your health. And Matt is saying, how dangerous it is even in small amounts. So I'll ask a couple questions I commonly get. Like sometimes people are like, well, I already, I don't know, did like a mold allergy test. Do I have to do something else? Or I already did this or that. I really want to see these mycotoxins because if I have a client, I want to be watching their health, not the health of the home is very important. But the health of your body is all you've got. You can move your home.
Well, both I think are equally important.
Yeah.
Let me talk about the mold allergy test, which is kind of a misconception that a lot of people have, or some practitioners don't understand what they're ordering. So you'll order like an IgG mold allergy or an IgE mold allergy, and the patient will be either high on that or low on that. And that doesn't really like determine really if you've been exposed to mold or mycotoxins at all. I mean, if the patient's really high on it, it indicates that they were exposed to mold sometime in the last 6 months, but doesn't like say if they've been exposed recently or 5 months ago. And then also you can like say like, oh, it's really high. It doesn't tell you whether or not you got the mycotoxins out or not. So like you could say like, well, 4 months ago we started treating you for mycotoxins. Your IgG is still really high, but that doesn't, the IgG for mold can be really high, but the mycotoxins could have been all removed from the body. So
yeah, I was kind of reading about that the other day for a different interview I was on, and it seems like the body will start, the immune system will start to produce antibodies to mold if you're in a moldy place. I think like whether or not you've had mold allergies before, maybe could be yes, could be no.
Like there's memory cells that will remember those type of things.
Okay.
But it doesn't really like help with determining what is causing your current problem. So I really like to try to like measure the specific thing. Is it VOCs? Is it mold? Is it metals? Try to like measure the specific item and not markers that are non-specific. And some people look at these like non-specific markers like the ILs, or they'll look at some of the other like cofactors that go in, the inflammation cofactors that occur.
Yeah, like with blood testing, you mean? Or
yeah, with blood testing, and generally those are very non-specific, and those can be elevated by mold, or they could be involved by other toxins as well.
Yeah, I think people need to understand like those are like the old school testing before we had these tests. So this is much more advanced. And even when I tested with real time, the mycotoxin dust, like before they had this EMA package, as far as I know, it was some years back. So things keep improving.
Yep.
And it's really great because you do want to know. It says here, ELISA uses antibodies prepared against mycotoxins. Do you want to explain that a little bit more for us non-science people?
That's a very, very detailed question.
Hard to explain. Okay.
Maybe if I like pull up a slide here, could I share?
Yeah, I think it'll let you share screen. If it doesn't, let me know and I'll fix it.
I think that maybe you'll have
to.
Oh,
I have to stop. Okay, there we go.
And then let me pull up one of my webinars that I gave recently, and that will help. I think that'll help explain it a little bit better. I'm a very visual person myself, so and I know that probably a subset of your people are as well. Okay, let me pull it over here. Okay, share my screen. It says that you disabled
I can probably
screen sharing.
I can probably fix it. Now that they added these Zoom security, it's a little harder. Let me find you and then I can. Oops. I lost my.
Oh, you can't do it. It's not a big deal. I can just describe. I can try to describe it.
Yeah, I'll keep looking, but try to.
Yeah. So I mean, well, so we all know what antibodies are. A lot of people probably know what antibodies are. They're kind of like a lock and key.
Okay, method. I think I fixed it for you, by the way. Yeah.
Okay. Now, okay. Let's see here now.
I just made you a co-host. See if that works.
Okay. Share screen.
Still no?
No, I got it.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is how our test works here. So you have these antibodies on the bottom of the well here, and they are designed to bind to mycotoxins. So when we add in the urine, we also mix it in with some labeled mycotoxins as well. So you have a combination of mycotoxins from the urine and mycotoxins that we put in that are labeled. And they kind of compete against each other for these limited number of antibody spots. And then we wash all the mycotoxins away, but the ones that got bound to the antibodies stay. And then our labeled mycotoxins will cause the wells to change color. So then we do an inverse calculation of the less it changes color means that there's more mycotoxins available. So the more green the well gets, the less mycotoxins were in the urine.
Oh, so, interesting.
It's a very complicated method of designing the antibodies to the specific mycotoxins. But
right.
The reason why I like the antibodies better than mass spec, I love mass spec. I've been using mass spec for 12 years now. But for mycotoxins, they're really modified by the human body quite a lot. So you get glutathione bound to them, you get sulfation bound to them, you get ubiquination bound to the mycotoxins, and so that causes the mass spec to not be able to see the mycotoxins. But with our antibodies, it still binds to the mycotoxins even if they're modified.
Wow.
So that's the reason why I really like doing an antibody test for mycotoxins versus mass spec.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, and I think your testing price is really reasonable, but you can kind of get a sense from looking at this, like this is like pretty advanced stuff. It's not like a pregnancy test from the dollar store. It's like,
No,
it's like
these are highly definitely
highly
a lot of, like,
sensitive.
science.
I don't even know how you got antibodies to mycotoxins collected. Like, it's all very interesting to me that you can even like do this. It's pretty amazing, really. Definitely not a technology. When do you think this technology for testing mycotoxins even came about?
So the antibody test came about in the late 90s.
Oh, okay.
In academic labs, and then commercially, Real Time was the first lab to do it, and they were in 2005.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Somebody asked which toxins come from which mold. So I'm going to answer that with a screen share real quick, and then I have another question for you, Matt. So this is the Great Plains urine test we run, and she was asking where does ochratoxin A come from. So they kind of put it underneath. So it comes from Aspergillus. So I like the way they do the report because they kind of say which ones come from what, and then there's kind of a.
Since I designed that, I appreciate.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and then this one's kind of a grab bag, right? The citrinin.
It is. There's multiple different species that produce citrinin, so
okay.
Identifying which species is coming, you really need to like look and see the other mycotoxins to try to like give you some type of clue of where the citrinin is coming from.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up a sample report of your EMA test in a minute here, but if you wouldn't mind answering a question that I have my opinion I'd like first. Sometimes people feel frustrated because their urine sample versus their home sample versus maybe some other sample didn't have the same species. So they feel like, oh, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. What's your opinion on that?
That's a great question. And the problem is like the problem has to lie with the human body, and what you're measuring in a urine test is what's coming out. What you're measuring in an EMA test is what's in the home at that particular moment. So there's two different factors they're working in this equation here. So the first one is that the mycotoxins are very lipophilic. So certain mycotoxins will pass through the body a lot faster than others. So, and then some only will come out when you're like doing like a massive provocation. So especially on the first test, you'll see like one pattern of mycotoxins, and then 3 or 4 months down the road, you'll see a completely different pattern of mycotoxins in the urine because of the possible treatment. Hyperbarics, glutathione, binders, all of those can influence which mycotoxins are coming out. So you're gonna get like your water soluble ones out first, and then your ones that are more like the trichothecenes, those ones are more lipophilic, they come out much later.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so your explanation was a little different than mine and a little more scientific. Mine is just like, don't worry about it. Like, you've got various molds. Like, don't think, oh, well, I have to get rid of this one mold. Or like, we had a client ask on our webinar last week, well, I just want to focus on like the molds that came up in my test. And I'm like, you just, you don't know one day to the other what mold you're going to find.
There's not one secret bullet for each different type of mold. Pretty much, I found that almost every mold is responsive to the major like protocols that I just kind of described. The like glutathione, binders, sauna, hyperbarics, those pretty much work across the board. But then you also want to like help with like bile acid flow, making sure that the like liver is still like working well, making sure that the patient isn't colonized with mold is a very important and kind of hard, sometimes difficult thing to figure out. Because if they're colonized with mold, then it's going to, no matter how often you try to pull out the mycotoxins, it's just going to keep on coming back. So you need to do some type of antifungal regimen then.
Yeah. I'm having a little trouble pulling up an example test. If you can do it faster, you are welcome to, of your Emma, or I can keep looking.
I unfortunately, I don't think I have one that is.
Oh, I got one. I just gotta find it. Hold on.
Let me ask the second half of your question.
Okay,
about,
sure.
About the Emma test. So molds only will make different mycotoxins depending on the conditions. So the temperature, the humidity, what they're growing on, all of these can like change which mycotoxin, whether or not they're being threatened. So all these different factors determine which mycotoxins a mold is making. So like, let's like talk about like aspergillus. Aspergillus might make ochratoxin at one point in time, but it might make gliotoxin some other time. So if you like measure,
I didn't know that actually. So it can rotate what it makes.
Yeah. So if you like measure a home like in like February, but then you like measure it again in like July, there's a possibility that the mycotoxins that you get from the air filter could be different.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I kind of emphasize, you know, there's, well, that way you explain it makes more sense. But to me, like, also, it's just a sample, right? And you take a sample from your house or your body at different periods of time, you're gonna potentially get different results. And sometimes it is a good thing, like you said, depending what treatments you're doing, you're pushing certain things out.
It's a picture of it's a picture in time, and yeah, I mean, you can't really like, and a lot of it depends on how your body is working that day. If your glutathione transferases are working really well that day, you might see a lot more mycotoxins in the urine than like the next day where they are kind of used up on other things like medications or on alcohol use or other toxins that you're being exposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of like factors that will influence how the body is eliminating toxins.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, you know, I usually see things positive on home tests, and well, we see more urine tests than home tests, but we usually see things positive. But occasionally, like I mentioned earlier, your levels in your health don't always correlate, and sometimes the levels don't look that high, but you're having a lot of symptoms, and you still move forward accordingly.
We try to, I mean, I'm actually trying to like work with I'm trying to like gather more data so we can give a better idea of exactly what our Emma test results mean. I know like right now we give number of spores, which I mean, any number of spores is, I think, problematic on our test. But like right here, you're seeing this is the mycotoxin part of the Emma. So you're looking at like the
part per billion you talk about, yeah.
I don't really like how we don't show like what this like means towards like the general population of homes or results. I'm working on a project to give like a more of a what percentile these results mean.
Okay.
So I think that will be more helpful to the to our population so they can like look at this result and don't need to like refer to me of like how bad is this. That's probably like one of the like biggest questions I get on a console is like, well, how does this compare to everybody else? Well, I want to be able to like depict that information on our report. So
yeah, and you're new there, so he can.
I got here at the middle of March.
Oh gosh.
So,
a lot going on. Yeah, and so we decided, actually, we were deciding, should we just let people run this on their own? And because it is a little tricky and because it's such an emotional and difficult decision, we decided to offer it with a consultation. So it only comes with a consultation. So if we can potentially talk to you guys, right, before a consultation. Okay. So
I definitely like highly recommend somebody they can do it on themselves, but I would definitely like either like recommend working for you guys or some type of like
biologist
that has been working with us in the past.
Yeah, or probably both. You know, it kind of does take a village. You know, I often say, like, don't like think your contractor or your mediator has all the answers for your health, and don't think your health practitioner has all your answers for your house.
Yep.
So, but talk to all of us, please, because it's all really important. And if you make mistakes in any of the areas, it can really set you back.
Definitely.
So here's some explanation of some of the kind of symptoms it can cause and systems it can affect. So that's interesting. And then are these the spores?
These are the spore counts. So, I mean, obviously any like amounts are, because we're only looking at, unlike the ERMI, which is looking at both like spores that are both pathogenic and benign. We only picked like 10 of the most pathogenic type of molds out there.
Yeah.
So
makes more sense to me. Yeah, this is just an example test, so it looks very good. Like nothing's really wrong with this person. Yeah. But you probably won't find this if you're living in a moldy home. And here's some of the explanation of that, which is helpful. And yeah, you know, the nice thing about having a consultation with us is we can give you some, you know, general feedback about your house from our own experience, and then also some indication of your health and, you know, should you be moving out? What steps should you be doing for detox? So yeah,
that's very important, and I think that's a great service that you're offering.
Yeah, I don't know if other people are doing it that way, but that's how we decided to do it. Let me take let's see, actually, I'm gonna do a little more screen sharing and then I will take some questions. So, Matt, you're gonna get to know our business right now. So this is detox month for us. Every month we have a different theme. So this is our first test we ever offered. It's the Great Plains urine test you developed or helped develop, where you can add on the OAT or the GPL tox. So this is a body test right here. And now we have the home test, the EMMA here, and this is also on sale. And everyone comes with a consultation. And this is our new mold mega package. It comes with home testing, urine testing, gut testing, and optional hormone testing. So you can click through and, you know, there's little videos and information like on all of these and more explanation about what it is. You can always contact us if you have more questions.
I think that's a great package. I mean, I can't tell you how many consults I've done with patients that have problems with their gut caused by mold.
Every single one of them, right? I would say.
I mean, I'd say like 80% of mold patients have high candida.
Yes.
And then Clostridia is about a third. And then so many people have Hashimoto's and other hormone issues.
So that's, you know, we also you can get the Hashimoto's testing and your hormone testing. Usually your hormones will be low. Just makes it more expensive. So we wanted to make two options in case you're like, I can't really stomach $2,500. You can do less. But if you just are like, you know what, I've been working on this a while, I'm not getting better, I really want to know where I'm at. I discovered I had Hashimoto's and discovered I had mold 2 months later. So they often crisscross. Actually, I ran my Dutch hormone test and she was like, these patterns indicate low thyroid. So I had my thyroid test done, found out I had Hashimoto's, and then I found out I had mold. Like these things just crisscross. Like we're not trying to make more problems for you. The problems are already there. So if you want to get a good thorough look at them.
Yeah, and you have to, I mean, almost all the experts say you have to tackle the mold and mycotoxins first. Then you can start moving towards treating the hormones and gut issues. But maybe you have a different philosophy on that.
I think different people have different. Some people say open detox pathways, then work on detox. Some people say you've got to get the gut healthy, you know, so it's not leaky as you're detoxing. I kind of really go like client by client. I did think when I had mold, like, okay, I just have to get rid of the mold and everything will fall into place. But it's not really true because the other systems have been so dysregulated.
No, they will not fall into place by themselves.
No, and sometimes you do have to give them a boost just to get your detox working. So I for a little while was on hormone replacement, and it was a really nice bridge for me because my body was just so depleted that I couldn't make those hormones. There's more we could say on all that, but I think it's okay to kind of crisscross depending on like the client presentation. Like the client can barely get out of bed, they've got no thyroid hormone. Maybe get them on that while you work on some other things. So that's again why you got to have a team, because we can't prescribe that. But sometimes, yeah, I did kind of oversimplify it in my own mind when I had mold, thinking, well, if I just push this out of the nest, I'll be good. But unfortunately, you do have to like go and kind of baby and support those other systems. So
definitely.
Yeah. So all those, as long as you're in the US, you can click through and purchase right from our site. Right now, it's just through Sunday. Those are on sale. I may extend it a day or two, but it won't be much beyond. What else was I going to say? If you're outside the US, just email us and we can help you and see what we can do. Okay, let me see. Oh yeah, Paul had just asked that. Paul, what about your guys' dust test? Can he ship from UK? Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. So Paul, just does it take any special labeling or anything?
They need to ship it to us themselves.
Okay. So Paul, contact our team so we can get the right protocol, because it's a little different sometimes when you just make sure. Okay.
But shipping overseas for the EMA test is fairly easy because it's only dust. So pretty much every country is able to do it.
Okay, yeah, it's only dust.
Urine is a little more difficult for some countries.
Okay. You mentioned mold colonization, and Kathleen was wondering about that, and I think a couple other people. How do you know if you've cleared the colonization? I can speak to that in my opinion, but what's your opinion on how you know if mold has colonized you?
I mean, we have a test for that called our mold MYCODART test. It's a blood test.
Oh.
That looks for DNA, mold DNA inside the body. So we have a link for that under our test page on our website. But that's the best way for testing for colonization.
Okay, I did not know about that. Yeah, because I was gonna say your guys' oat test supposedly says it. I never see it on there though, and I know that some of those people I think must be colonized. I just never see it come up as colonized. I do sometimes test the nose for there's colonization there. We don't always run that test because it's so hard to clear the nose. So it's sort of like trending now, it seems like, in the mold space to like de-emphasize the Marcon's infection. So that is one way to test.
True.
Yeah. Lindy's asking, if she moved out of the house a year ago, can she still test her body and see potentially toxins in there?
Unfortunately, yes. I've seen people move out of homes 5 years later, especially ones that have been colonized, and still have very large amounts of mycotoxins. Even if they aren't colonized, the mycotoxins, like I said before, are very lipophilic, which means that they're fat soluble. So they'll find your adipose tissue, or your fat tissue, or even your muscles, and bind into those tissues and stay there for years, if not.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple times with clients I've worked with. And one, I just did a consult, and she was in a toxic home 6 years ago, but never treated it at all, and still dealing with fatigue and different problems. And I'm like, yeah, we should test, because you never detoxed.
If the person still has symptoms, they still have toxins, very likely.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Diane, you're welcome, Diane, to schedule with us to review the ERMI test or any other results you have, because we do offer a past labs review. Alyssa's saying she had aspergillus in her urine test, and her allergist said that these molds are everywhere outside in rotten leaves in my area. Is it worth testing my house?
Yes, because our home test is also, we understand which values you're going to see outside the home and inside the home, and we will indicate our indications on our system show if it is outside versus inside, and there are different species. Aspergillus that grows outside the house is a different species than the ones that are growing inside the home.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so we
Like I
maybe
said, the Aspergillus is not one species; it's a family.
okay.
So people get confused by that.
I think this could kind of piggyback to a broader question. Well, what if I just live in a humid area? Or what if I, am I just kind of screwed type of thing?
I mean, the answer to that is not an easy one, because I can tell you that the number of people that have done urine mycotoxins, they do congregate to certain parts of the country. I mean, Florida, the Pacific Northwest, and like the Houston area are like my big three.
Oh, interesting. That's why, after they had the hurricane, it was Houston, right?
Yep.
That's when I did my first little mold event, because I was like, oh no, those people are gonna be getting it.
There's still a lot of damage that hasn't been remediated down there. So
I'm going to take a couple more questions, but we have to close soon. I did put the link to these mold kits in the chat here, and we'll send out also a replay this weekend, or you can always contact our customer service if you can't find something. Let's see, let me try to find a good. A couple people asked about finding a non-moldy rental. So maybe we should cover that one. I don't know if you have any
tips I don't know
on that. I can do my best.
I don't know the answer to that.
The tricky part with renting, I do have an answer. It's not a perfect answer. The tricky part with renting is you can't, so we went through, our family went through this same conundrum, and you can visually inspect under sinks, look at, if there's any water on the roof. You can ask questions. Has there been any flooding, when was the roof last maintained? If you've cleared yourself from mold and you've been somewhere safe for a month or 3 months, you can usually react pretty quickly to mold. It's not guaranteed, but now I react really quickly. So if you've given yourself that window to, detox your senses, so to speak, you'll usually pick up on the mold faster by wheezing, by getting a headache, by whatever, within a few minutes. This happens to me periodically. So you can also ask the person, can I, be in the house for a couple hours? I mean, you could ask, could I run a mold plate test? I don't know if they're going to want to wait for you 2 weeks to run a mold plate test, or, I'm not sure about if they would do that. You could ask, you could say, I have some environmental health issues. What is your policy if I'm not feeling well here and I need to get out of the lease? All these things sound a little high maintenance, but better you say it sooner than just, smile and sign the papers and then realize you don't want to be there. So I would encourage you having some kind of conversation about either the history of the house or your options with getting out. These are kind of my thoughts. Great. Any last comments, Matt?
No, I think we covered everything that I normally go over.
Okay, yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground. I'm really excited. I'm kind of glad to get to know you again. You're helping with 2 different companies that I like a lot and we use a lot. So, and got to understand your test better. Maybe speaking to you again as we start running more of these. So,
I'm happy to come on again.
Serve people the best we can. Great. Thanks, everyone.